early just to get on the boat club to bring a family service early. So, but are there any? Is it fair to ask questions while Joe's still in the kitchen? That's almost like cheating. Oh, my wife has a question.
But it's not theological. I need to go run and pick up some more food for pumpkin from Tommy after church. So while you're at the boat club, I'm going to go shopping for Blizzard. Is there anything you want?
It's all good. All right. Are there any questions about life, the universe, and/or anything before we dive on into Exodus 38? Oh. I have a question. Okay.
Sorry, I was getting food and picking out Sunday school lessons.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Now, the kids will have plenty of questions for you today. So, what question do you have today, Joe?
So I'm thinking as we're singing the hymn.
Oh, which hymn?
The one that had one verse.
Salvation unto us has come.
No.
The greatest hymn of listening.
Diane will know why I'm thinking about this.
Is it in the beginning or the end?
It was in the middle. The one that talks about works.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because of my Catholic upbringing.
It is. Salvation unto us has come by God's free grace and favor. Good works cannot avert our doom. They help and save us never. In terms of our relationship with God.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
How does that differ from faith without works is worthless?
All right. See, there is a connection between faith and work. And what does what? One of the things that's incredibly important to remember is the difference between a cause and effect. And if I want to be really simple, I think a lot of people don't understand the connection between cause and effect anymore. This is something that it seems to be mystifying to you. What is the difference between a cause and effect?
Effect is the aftermath, cause is the preempt.
The cause happens and then an effect occurs. All right? Ready? If I let go of the pen, what will happen? What will the effect be?
It will float
It'll
me.
fall on the table and then roll on the floor maybe.
All right. When we talk about faith and works, these two are connected. The problem is we want our work to be a cause. We want our works to cause something. For example, it often works that way in life. If I bring my wife flowers, that is a lovely cause. And what type of effect am I hoping for? Please don't be mad at me for what I bring. Or let me go buy this, or what have you. What? I don't know. Flowers.
I know that your face looks strange, but I used to have a boyfriend. Whenever he did something wrong, that's all. The only time he brought me flowers, and it was the first thought was, "What'd you do wrong?"
What'd you do? Why did you bring me flowers? He usually doesn't bring me flowers. He brings me either some form of chocolate or something.
You like chocolate better?
Chocolate's better than flour.
Flour fades, chocolate is always tasty. All right. So the thing in our lives is so often we're used to our works being a cause of setting up a transaction, quid pro quo, this for that. We're so used to living thinking that our works, what we do, gain us something. Well, I mean, how many of you have gone to a job, done work, and gotten paid for it? That's the way the world works. That is fine for interaction between neighbors. But what we understand is before God, our works never cause anything. I don't get to shift God or have an effect upon God by my works. Rather, I understand this. God has given me faith. And the effect of faith will be works. Where there is faith, there will be works. It happens because works are the effect of faith. God gives us faith, and what will follow will be works. Now, there's even a danger in that, in saying that, because how many of you are by nature petty and judgmental? The temptation is, well, I know that works are supposed to follow faith, and I look at Job. I don't think he's doing enough works, therefore what should I say? Oh, maybe his faith isn't. No, that is not the right calculus. That's not the right, you're jumping into judgment. You aren't in a position to judge another's works. Because frankly, Joe, how much time a week do I get to spend with you?
Hour? 2 maybe?
And in those 2 hours, all right, Sunday morning, we'll even make it 2.5, all right? How much of that 2.5 hours of time do I get to devote to actual paying attention to Job? Maybe 5 minutes? Well, but even when he asks a question, now note, how many of you have I looked at while I've been answering Job's question?
Everybody.
Yeah, because how am I in a position to judge the totality of Job's spiritual life from the little bit of time I have with him? No, in fact, if I end up judging someone and saying, oh, I don't, that Ruth, she's just a cruise. In reality, that probably says more about me than it does about her. Something about the log near 09 before the speck, you hypocrite. So we confess that faith leads to works. That doesn't mean go and try to measure everyone's works and try and backtrack to figure out what their faith is like. No, works are a gift. They don't work as a lever to manipulate.
Very well put.
Part of being sinful is that we love to manipulate. That's what we... The difference, the big difference is this. The difference between manipulation, or if you don't want to sound that bad, transaction, deal making. This is so often how the world operates, and that's what we live in. And as sinful people, we love. How do you feel better if you get a good deal on something? In fact, our former president had a lovely book entitled what?
The Art of Deal Making.
The Art of the Deal, all right? By faith, we see something else. It's all gift. All gift given to us by God. If I preach a good sermon, does that mean God will have to like me because I actually did a good job? No, why not? Because
he likes you anyway.
one, he likes me anyway, because of Christ. And second of all, if I preach a good sermon, whose responsibility? Who's the cause of that?
The Holy Spirit.
Ain't me, it's a gift to me from God. If you guys understand something, that's not, oh, because I'm so great, that's a gift of the Holy Spirit. It's all gift. If I have cash in my pocket, well, yes, we all might be the means by which I get that cash. Thank you for putting money in the offering plate and signing checks if that's your job. But it's a gift from God. God provides. So I'm not going to be able to bribe God with my offering. It's all gift. Faith receives. And this is the big difference. The difference between these two things is I receive by faith, and then I also give by faith, without worrying about what I'm going to get back. What's the difference with that and a transaction?
Transaction, you're worried about what you're going to get back.
And in fact, the only reason why I would give something is because I'm going to get something back. Transaction is this. It's a back and forth. The Christian faith is this. God gives me everything, so therefore I am free to give it out. I don't have to worry about what's coming back. And man, if that ain't hard. Especially hard if what? If you don't have much of anything. Most of the most generous people I have known have been some of the poorer people I've known. Why?
Because they know poverty, I mean, they know not having something. It may not be poverty, but they know that they had to save for something big. They know
When they get something, they feel blessed.
As opposed to folks who have stuff. Gee, what did Jesus say about rich people and entering the kingdom of heaven? Something about because if you have the wealth of the world, the unrighteous man, you're so caught up in this all the time with that it's really hard to remember this is the reality. So, which is why this is Pastor Brown's nice advice that he gives to people going through marriage counseling or pre-marriage counseling. When I talk about offerings and such like that, I talk about the idea of first fruits. Plan what you want to give. I don't care what you give. I don't care how much. You can do a percentage. You can do a round number. You can do whatever. And you can include the church. You can include the other charity, whatever. But the first thing you do with the money that you get, you should give it away. Why? Because it's really hard to turn something into an idol if the first thing you do with it is give it away. You don't give idols away. What do you do with them? You clean on them. I'm like, go figure out your own finances. I'm not a financial advisor, but we receive from God and we give. That's the pattern. Figure out how to apply it in your life. There you go. Does that kind of work on that whole?
Oh yeah, very good.
But do you see how whenever we get in that works righteous attitude, it's just falling back into the way of the world. It's treating God like he's a business partner that you're trying to impress. And that's not the reality of it. Now, are you ready for the transition into Exodus here? So remember that with all the building that they are doing of all this stuff, it's not done to impress God, but it is communicating stuff about God. It is declaring what God has done and how richly he has, in fact, blessed them, how much they have received from God. Because the fact that they've gone from slaves to where a year later they're able to gather the resources to build the temple, or tabernacle, sorry, wrong section. All right, so let's start on. Are there any other questions? If any of you want to know, salvation with us has come is probably my favorite hymn, and you will get extra credit if you have it memorized and you speak it to me. Of course, as I'm not grading and we don't operate by credit, it doesn't do me any good, but you get cool points. So, all right. Can someone read, how about verses 1 through 7 of chapter 38?
He made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood. 5 cubits was its length, and 5 cubits its width. It was square, and its height was 3 cubits. He made its horns on its 4 corners. The horns were of one piece with it, and he overlaid it with bronze. He made all the utensils for the altar, the pans, the shovels, the basins, the forks, and the fire pans. All its utensils he made bronze. And he made a grate of bronze network for the altar, under its rim, midway from the bottom. He cast 4 rings for the 4 corners of the bronze grating as holders for the poles. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with bronze. Then he put the poles into the rings on the sides of the altar with which to bear it. He made the altar hollow with boards.
All right, anything stand out there in that section? One, the altar.
Now they're using bronze when before they were using gold.
Right. Again, what's the difference between shifting from gold to bronze?
Well, gold
Bronze
is
is
more
hard.
precious than bronze.
Right.
Well, and this is the altar that's gonna be used. It's not,
This is
it's
the
not
thing
just
that's
a
gonna get
picture,
used.
yeah.
I mean, those rings for the tabernacle and stuff, they're not, you're not marching around with it all the time. It's meant to, there the primary function is beauty. If you're doing bronze, what do you need? You need beauty, but you also need durability. And I also want to note out one other thing. This plays out through the whole of the Old Testament. What year is this going on? This is going on roughly 1450 BC. What are we in 1450 BC?
Not the Bronze Age.
No, we are still in the Bronze Age. We haven't moved into, we're just starting to get the Iron Age. And that actually becomes a major issue that comes up later on, like 4 centuries down the line, when they're dealing with the Philistines. Because the Philistines outlawed metalwork. That's why when you get the story of David and Goliath, Saul gives armor to David. Why? Because you didn't have common metal. It was really hard to have metal. The Israelites didn't have swords. What did you make your swords with? What did you make your weaponry with? You made them with bronze.
Why did they outlaw metalwork?
Well, if you are part of a government that wants to exercise tyranny, you outlaw the ability of people to make themselves weapons and arms.
Oh, kind of like gas.
Or you outlaw the sale of ammunition. Or
guns.
Okay.
How do you oppress a population? You eliminate their ability to fight back. And so basically, the Philistines conquer Israel and they outlaw anyone working with metal in Israel, which means you can't arm yourself. You can't. We will control the metal market. That contrast is this is when bronze would be the grade A weapon material. But what's the main thing it's used for? Not, all right, we're going to go take over the Holy Land, so I want you to make a whole bunch of weapons. No, you'll use that bronze first and foremost for worship, for burnt offering, for sacrifice, for being right with God. It's a fascinating thing. It's just a really neat little contrast that stands out because suddenly we're getting bronze. Bronze is the work, the tool, that metal. So, question. All right, let's do one more verse, verse 8. I'll take that one. He made the basin of bronze and the stand of bronze from the mirrors of the ministering women who ministered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So, again, we forget how things would have operated in the ancient world. Why would there be mirrors in the front of the tent of meeting?
Probably so the people in the back could see.
If you make a mirror, how many of you think to make the mirror of bronze?
Well, that's what the first mirrors were. They were shiny metal.
And why did you have shiny metal by the entrance? It's dark inside. It's a giant tent and stuff. That was how you reflected light in it. So you would have people in the front who would move the mirrors around to reflect light in. You guys have seen the movie The Fifth Element, right? The Z's light.
Well, I was thinking of the Mummy when she was making them move those things so that they could get
Saying, hey, where did those both take place? In Egypt. So again, they're setting up all that stuff. And more important than light in the tabernacle is purification. Because God's light. He'll supply the light that's needed. Don't worry about it. Be purified. Be close with God. So, questions, comments there? How did your light thing go? I remembered it Friday morning. Sorry. Brian got to have fun with the light at the library on Thursday night, and I missed it.
Talking about different movies with the light legend.
Oh, yeah. Tim Curry the devil. All right. Let's go look at the court now. This is a big chunk. Would someone read 9 through 20?
Then he made the court on the south side. The hangings of the court were of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long. There were 20 pillars for them, with 20 bronze sockets. The hooks of the pillars and their bands were silver. On the north side, the hangings were 100 cubits long, with 20 pillars and their 20 bronze sockets. The hooks of the pillars and their bands were silver. And on the west side, there were hangings of 50 cubits, with 10 pillars and their 10 sockets. The hooks of the pillars and their bands were silver. For the east side, the hangings were 50 cubits. The hangings of one side of the gate were 15 cubits long, with their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets, and the same for the other side of the court gate. On this side and that were hangings of 15 cubits, and their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets. All the hangings of the court all around were of fine woven linen. The sockets for the pillars were bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their bands were silver, and the overlay of their capitals was silver, and all the pillars of the court had bands of silver. The screen for the gate of the court was woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen. The length was 20 cubits, and the height along its width was 5 cubits, corresponding to the hangings of the court. And there were 4 pillars with their 4 sockets of bronze. Their hooks were silver, and the overlay of their capitals and their bands was silver. All the pegs of the tabernacle and of the court all around were bronze.
All right. So what is being described here? What's the court? Let's do a little bit on ancient temples and tabernacles. So you would have the Holy of Holies and the Holies. That's where only the priest went. But you would have the courtyard where everyone could go. So most of the stuff we did before was stuff that no one would ever see. But if you were an Israelite, this area, that was your place to hang out. That was your place to be. That was, well, we have the same mirror set up in our sanctuary. Because we got the altar. How many of you go up before the altar during service? Where do y'all generally hang out? We call it the nave because, oh look, it looks like an oak now. But that's the equivalent of the courtyard. So what you're getting here, and what it did is it would have gone all the way around with a little bit of space in back behind and to the side. But this half of the courtyard was where the people got to be. And so we're getting to the part where the people get to be. And what do you notice about the construction of the courtyard? It has to be portable. But
It's big.
where would I go to find 150 feet of linen anything? That's a 50-yard roll. And think about how tall it is. Would that be cheap?
No.
And
If you read it.
It would be custom.
well, I mean, but again, it's one of the things where even the part, the courtyard, the outer coverings were done incredibly well. So you do get that part that all the people of Israel would see. This is the part of the tabernacle that we'd be used to seeing. And what does it look like? It's
Beautiful.
beautiful. That there is beauty for where God is, but there's also beauty for where we come to meet with God and have our sins forgiven and to have the sacrifices made. And that this beauty goes with us wherever we go. It really is a neat setup. So, Don, you've done this.
We were looking at the map.
Oh, okay. Did my nice little simple drawing kind of work out well with the map?
Pretty much.
No, it's thing about Courtyards, I will do my nice little side story. This was the neatest experience of my trip to Egypt. So I'm in Egypt on a seminary tour group, and the tour guide, who was actually a nice Roman Catholic fellow by the name of Osman, was pointing out a lot of the Egyptian temples. And this is just the way they built the temples in Egypt. The Israelite temples basically follow that pattern. The Holy of Holies, then the courtyard. And we were in Luxor, which was the royal city of Egypt. That's where the nobility lived. And they had a unique temple structure there. The temple structure there had a double courtyard. So you had the inner temple, but then there was one courtyard, then another courtyard. And the reason for that was this was the public courtyard, and this was the royal courtyard. And in those courtyards, you wouldn't just do necessarily just religious stuff. That would also be a place where if you wanted to do business and get it officially, you'd do it there. Or if you were going to tutoring, you'd often go to your tutoring in the courtyard. Because generally, who were your educated people who did the teaching? Well, clergy. And so we are standing right here in the edge of the royal courtyard, and Osman is going on, and here's this and that and this. So, and this is where they would have done the training, the tutoring of the royal family, because they trained in the royal part. So you understand what this means. You were standing where Moses learned to read and write. And it was just sort of like, okay, that was a very neat. So, but the point is, this is that public space. This is the people's part of the tabernacle. And is anything skimped on it? No. Because it's God's house for his people. So, don't put a comfy cushion on pastor's seat and then no lousy cushions on y'all's. No, it doesn't work that way. All right? Questions there? All right, let's finish the chapter. Who wants a lot of fun numbers? Actually, let's just do 21 to 23 first, and then we'll get to big fun numbers. Okay, I will be kind. These are the records of the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were recorded at the commandment of Moses. The responsibility of the Levites under the direction of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer, an embroiderer in blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. So again, that's just the recounting. We've got the guy from the north, the guy from the south, who will eventually be from the north and who will eventually be from the south. It's set up for all of Israel. They're all together. It's all set up. Here's the record of it. Why do you make the record of it? Be able to do replacements, to do repairs. So, now let's get to the cost. Are you ready? How many of you have gotten a bill and gone through it itemized, and your eyes just keep getting wider and wider and wider? All right. Well, I'll let one of you all read verses 24 through the end of the chapter.
All the gold that was used for the work and all the construction of the sanctuary, the gold from the offering was 29 talents and 730 shekels. By the shekel of the sanctuary, the silver from those congregations who were recorded was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels. By the shekel of the sanctuary, a beka, a head, was half a shekel. By the shekel of the sanctuary, for everyone who was listed in the records from 20 years old and upward, were 3,550 men. The hundreds of talents of silver were for casting the bases of the sanctuary and the bases of the veil. 100 bases for the 100 talents, a talent a base. And 1,775 shekels made hooks for the pillars and overlaid their capitals and made fillets for them. The bronze that was offered was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. With it he made the bases for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the bronze altar and the bronze grating
what's a talent and what's a shekel?
Isn't a talent a year's wages?
Talent would be more than that. 20 years' wages at least. A talent was roughly 75 pounds of something. So when you hear that gold list, it's saying that they used roughly a ton of gold. And when it comes to the amount of silver, I'm just doing math in my head, you could say probably 4 tons of silver. So again, there's a lot of metal involved in here. And think about what that would cost. I mean, it's not a cheap building, but this is the sense of here's the quality that they choose. All right, when we talk about these hooks, he made them with this much stuff, so you know the thickness that's involved and the quality that's involved. So there is definite focus on quality and setup and all that type of stuff.
Were the people paid to do this?
No. Cheap labor. Well,
Well, they're used to being slaves.
well, no, I mean they are. They're paid. Give us to stay our daily bread, and they've received gifts already from God. So why do they need more pay? The whole story is what they're getting from God, and they're just using it.
And they're living in tents, they don't have
Right.
solid buildings and yeah.
The idea of the modern economy, and I better have some extra money put in my 401k is for it. Because you're getting what's needed, and God is giving it, and God is providing. So we're doing what's set before us.
At today's prices, that would be billions of dollars.
Oh, yes. And well, remember, and you're talking about a big group of people. You're talking about 600,000 men. So I mean that's the family basically. The number of almost think about the number of families or households that there would be. So it's a large chunk of people, and so it's a bunch spread out over a bunch of people. But it's a serious investment, however you want to put it.
I wonder how they got over 600,000 families to agree on how they were gonna build it.
They didn't agree, they were told how to do it.
There was no vote. It was, this is the word of the Lord.
This is what you're doing.
And last time we didn't pay attention to what the Lord said, we threw our own party and did it our own way. A bunch of us got killed. So let's just do it the Lord's way.
Did they take turns going to services? Because you can't get 600,000 people in that. I mean, that's a big area, but
What you would do is you would end up gathering around
outside.
the outside, and it would probably be the higher ranking people of the family would come on in. So basically, if only one can get inside, it's going to be grandpa. It's going to be the patriarch. It's going to be, and then also there would be other times throughout the year when the individual families would get to come. So it's something where you have opportunity on the non-holidays for celebrations of your own.
In verse 25, the silver from those of the congregation who record, or when I hear it, it sounded like they had multiple areas where they kind of gathered.
Right. Yeah.
So like they all didn't go downtown. Some of them met like in the northeast corner and the
I'm
south.
sure it was like how they organized the youth gathering, but manyfold about here's how you can set up. They were doing it. They had their own organization. So, and also this is set up too, not just for when they're in the desert, but also for once they've gone into the Holy Land. So again, once they're in the Holy Land and they've taken possession of it, which is bigger than modern day Israel. It's a little bit above and beyond. You wouldn't have had as many people congregating there at the same time, except when we had the major festivals, when it would be set up to have everyone.
Well, Jesus had his Nazarene synagogue
Right.
that he went to versus when he went to the temple.
Right. Yep. So, all right, any other thoughts there? All right, now, Diana, if I was going to go look for new priestly garments, where would I look?
In one of the catalogs.
Yeah, we have catalogs for this. So if you've ever gotten an all-me catalog and you look through it, This might be really exciting. How many of you are really interested in pastoral and clerical garb? All right. But we just talked about what the tabernacle is adorned with. Here we're going to start looking at the priestly garment. So I'll do the first verse. From the blue and purple and scarlet yarns, they made finely woven garments for ministering in the holy place. They made the holy garments for Aaron as the Lord had commanded Moses. If someone would take 2 through 5.
He made the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of the fine woven linen. And they beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and the fine linen into artistic designs. They made shoulder straps for it to couple it together. It was coupled together at its 2 edges. And the intricately woven band of his ephod that was on it was of the same workmanship, woven of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
So, again, you get the ephod, which is the breastplate that the high priest would wear going before. When you had the 12 stones on it, each for the tribes of Israel. So the thing that would represent Israel that the priest would bear was done how? Of the same type of quality. Again, we're doing it right.
How did that transform in today's modern day? Pastors, priests, and so forth all wear all black. Or usually wear all black. We're not looking at him in his underwear.
Okay.
But he's not in service.
Right. A lot of the super finery that we had from the old Jewish custom went away when the temple was destroyed. Because both the early church and then later on even the Jewish communities were often exiled, where you didn't have that same formality. This wasn't what your priest would wear when they were just off in a town somewhere. This was the temple stuff, and that goes away. And so really what you have, this is basically a modern stylized version of a cassock, which is basically the old black robe. You know what the old black robe was? Just simple daily wear. It was actually not fancy at all. And so basically, what does the clerical collar look like? Just the shirt itself, ignore the collar. It looks like what? A simple shirt, right? Could someone wear a short sleeve or a long sleeve? They do make a long sleeve. I just don't like long sleeves. If you saw a long sleeve shirt that was tucked in, that would be what? Normal professional wear. The distinction was just, okay, we'll put the weird collar on. And this is what, okay, I will note something. Do you notice how I have this little flap here? Why do I have this flap?
Attach your
To
microphone.
hide the buttons. And what other piece of garment or article of clothing do men sometimes wear that's designed to cover the buttons? That was the purpose of the tie. Used to not be a thing until, I think it was Victoria who said, it's really unseemly to see all these buttons. So that was when the cravat, just the necktie, became a necktie to cover the buttons. Well, if I'm wearing a piece of plastic here, I don't have a tie, so they actually put a button covering on it. So I have a built in. But again, that's just fitting off. This is a modern, post-19th century and beyond variation of the old cassock, which was just your work robes and stuff like that. It was all meant to be very common. But then when you actually went to the sanctuary and did service, then you might have other stuff that went on. That basically were marks of office. And a lot of what we do today parallels what? What other group, when they're doing something official, will put on funny robes?
The army or the
Royalty.
service.
Royalty.
Not so much royalty.
Judges.
Judges? A judge, when he's coming in, will wear a robe. What's the other one? What, that's dealing with the church. Ever go to a graduation at a college?
Oh, yeah.
They were marks of education and office. And so we basically paralleled that structure. Now we put our own spin on it. So instead of wearing black and a hood, academic hood, I wear a white hood. But there have been times when it's that same sort of, oh, he's got a funny outfit on. He's here for a purpose. So, but even then, our funny outfits, that's probably not the most pious way to refer to it. But even that our outfits aren't necessarily as ornate as what you see here. A little bit of lace and all is fine, but don't go overboard, guys. Come on. All right. Does that answer that, sort of?
Yeah.
There was one prof at the seminary who would wear a cassock around campus. It happened. And one of my friends who was an admission counselor, Mike Scudder, who's now in Iowa serving in the parish, good fellow. He would wear his Cubs jacket. He and I would both wear scarves. And you'd see me say, I see you're wearing your baptismal garments today. You'd like it. But he was walking around campus with his son. And Dr. Jewish would do this. With short hair, the nice little tiny glasses, just walking on. And the cassock is flowing behind him. And his son looks up, just sees him from across. Who's that? And Pastor Scudder goes, that's Batman. And so that was the cause of much humor and merriment. So, all right, there you go. Apropos of very good. How about, I'm looking to see where we're at. How about we just do verses 6 and 7, then take a break there. That way I can get ready to go over any. But can someone read 6 and 7?
And they set onyx stones enclosed in settings of gold. They were engraved, signets are engraved, and with the names of the sons of Israel. He put them on the shoulders of the ephod, that they should be stones for a memorial for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
All right, I wrote something on the board that had a different translation. A remembrance or memorial. I prefer the word remembrance, but even then I don't think that gets it well enough for modern English. If I say memorial or remembrance or remember, what do you generally think of?
Funeral.
Do this in remembrance of me.
All right. Well, but even with do this in remembrance of me, if I just use the word remember, what does it mean to remember?
Something in the past.
We think of it as something in the past. The emphasis there, and that's not the point. The example I will give is one of my mom. When I was in high school, my mom would often ask me, Eric, did you remember to take out the trash? That wasn't a question about the past. It was a question about what? Right now, in the present, is the trash taken out? That's the idea of remembrance. That a past statement has a present reality. This ring is a remembrance. What is it a remembrance of? That I what? Would I say that I got married or that I am married?
You are.
That's the point. That past event has a present reality, and this should be the reminder now. Not a memorial, but a reminder. Reminder just the idea. And so the priest is going to put this ephod with the 12 stones depicting the 12 tribes of Israel on his chest as he goes in for a what? for a reminder to God. Think about how often the prayer goes up in the Old Testament for God to remember his covenant. Remember the promises you made to our fathers of old, to Abraham. That's not asking God to say, oh yeah, I like Abraham. Too bad you're such a jerk. I would have done something good for him, but you can sit and spin. No, it's that promise that you made in the past, make it be a present reality. Do, Lord, oh do now. And so this is one of the things where we miss so much of the nuance of this word, in part because we're people living in the 21st century. And one of the things that has come up with the Enlightenment is we are much more comfortable thinking abstractly and in our mind. And so when we hear memory or stuff like that, we think of, in our mind, thinking back, rather than a present reality. Even like, what's the point of a memento? It's so that I have something with me now. A keepsake is so that it's with me now. There's that present nuance. So the priest puts it on, that remembrance of Israel, before he goes into the temple. Why? Because whenever he goes into that holy place, God is going to be doing stuff for the people of Israel when? Right now. God himself is present. And yes, it's okay that you can do this, and even if we have messed up, it will be okay because God will remember his covenant. Same thing goes on in church. When I forgive sin. On what basis do I forgive sin? By the steady command of my Lord Jesus Christ. So the effect, the present effect today, doesn't hinge upon us, it hinges upon whom?
Jesus.
Christ and what he has done. That past event becomes a present reality. That's what remembrance is. And it's just, it's something that we're not used to thinking of because we're so used to thinking of stuff in our minds instead of now. God himself is present. So that's why a reminder might come closer. Because again, it's got that remind. It's putting it in your mind now. But so often we abstract memory instead of realizing that memory is for the present. If I ask you to memorize something, I'm not asking you to just have it for now. I'm asking so that if you've memorized it 5 years from now, where will it be? Forgotten. Hopefully with you. So, all right. I'm going to suggest we pause there so I can get on my way. But are there any questions before we wrap on? I had that same lecture last night. Remember, it came up in Genesis. Okay.
So, did the priests in Jesus' time still wear this, or was it slightly different? I mean, would they have made it exact? Because, they went through wars and stuff and had things taken away.
I have not read Ezra and Nehemiah recently enough to give you a concrete answer. Because they rebuilt the temple. And Ezra and Nehemiah, those books go over that. And I'm pretty sure there were differences, but I can't tell you what they are off the top of my head.
Because I was just looking at pictures of the Old Testament one, and they had the different stones for the different tribes, and they have like 20 different images of the same statement. So I was just wondering if it would have been.
Well, it's one where now all we get is, all right, I'm going to try and artistically render this, but you're
Well,
not
they
the
did
artist.
diamonds in the patterns, and some had stripes, and I'm thinking it was probably stripes originally because that would have been easier to weave than some weird diamond pattern.
They weren't Scottish. Stripes were fine. They didn't need purple.
But some of the stuff they talk about, like the gold being beaten and made into threads,
Right.
and mine says crafted cunningly.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is
So it's not like something that's easy to do. They're doing it.
And
for quality purposes.
the other aspect that does come up is when that temple is rebuilt after the Babylonian exile. the folks who come back are lesser in numbers, and they're not necessarily the most successful ones. So I'm not sure just what resources they had to marshal. I mean, that was one of the reasons why the temple they were in Jesus' day, that was Herod's temple, where he did a massive rebuilding it and refurbishing of it. So I'm not sure what the state of the temple treasury was. It comes up quite a bit in the New Testament. They're very interested in getting money into the temple treasury, but I'm not sure what they're.
Is there any discussion of what happened to all that material from the temple when the temple was destroyed?
The assumption is that the Babylonians carried it off. In fact, when you get the writing on the wall from Nebuchadnezzar's son, the cause of that is he pulls out the vessels from the temple and uses them for his drinking feast. So a lot of it gets carried off to Babylon because it's been defiled. It's been used in the worship of false gods, so it ain't coming back to the temple even when you let you have it. So it's gone. It's done. But yeah. Now you go read.
Now you go study.
The post-exile stuff again and get more info on that. So. All right, let's wrap up with prayer. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, your mercies are new to us every day, and we thank you for the great love that you have shown to us in your Son, Jesus Christ. Be with us this day. Guide and direct in all that we do. Make us to be mindful of the many gifts that you have given us, and fill us with your love and charity that we might rightly serve and give to those that you have placed into our lives. This we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I did translate this week the first chapter of 1 Thessalonians, and it was fun. I'll probably do some more, so we'll get there in a few weeks in theory. So, all right, have a good day, everybody.
If you ever see